Good evening. Happy Sunday, everybody. I think it's all very important that you know that I referenced Supertramp in my homily today, and it was awesome. That's what we're going to start off with tonight. And unless anybody has anything better to talk about, we're going to end up rambling like that. So, yeah, no, nobody's curious about that, huh? That's okay. That's fine. Oh, hold up. You snuck on me, Andrew. I didn't see you there.
How's
You've
it
probably
going?
never even
Hello.
heard of you probably never even heard of Supertramp before, have you?
Nope.
That's what I thought. 1975, Breakfast in America. It's a pretty awesome album. You should look it up.
Mm.
I have it on vinyl. How's
Super random question.
okay, go for it.
You mentioned baptismal registries. Where
Yeah.
would I find one of those?
Um so I'll tell you the way we do it in Catholic world. The
Hmm.
way we do it in Catholic world is at the parish that you were baptized. They keep a record of all of all of the sacraments that you've received. Actually, so if you go to the cathedral in Rapid City, South Dakota, you'll find my baptismal record there, and it notes not only my baptism but also my confirmation, my ordination to the diaconate, and my ordination to the priesthood. It's all written down there. So you would need to find the parish that you were baptized at. If you were baptized at a Catholic parish, that's how it would be.
Okay, so what if you don't know the parish you would be baptized at?
Ask your mom.
Oh, God. All right. So, what do you think about Breakfast in America?
It's got some pretty cool tracks. A lot of classics on it. You've got "Take the Long Way Home." You've got "Breakfast in America," and yeah, the Logical Song, "Goodbye Stranger." Some other cool ones in there.
Mm.
Yeah. Phlebas says that same in the Reformed world that they're supposed to keep records. I suppose because a lot of Reformed folks would practice infant baptism. So now, Andrew, I can't help but be insatiably curious and ask why that's an important question at this time.
Yeah, I'm getting baptized.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Alrighty. That's cool. Congratulations. Big fan of baptism. Ethiopian Orthodox, we would recognize their baptisms without a question. So, as far as I'm concerned, you're going to be a regenerated Christian there. Um, why is it important for you to find your baptismal records?
I'm getting baptized Coptic Orthodox. And I don't know. I just figured I should probably know that
You
sort of
should
stuff.
you should know if you've been baptized already. I mean, like the question would be is did you go to a church? Did your parents take you to a church when you were a baby? Because if you were Baptist, you would know because they don't baptize infants, so you should be able to remember that. And I guess I don't know what your relationship with your parents is like at this point.
Hmm. Yeah.
Whether or not that'd be a hard conversation.
My by the time I was born, my dad was died in the wool evangelical,
Hmm.
but he's also got Catholic parents, right?
Hmm.
So, and he's not too strict about the whole I believe in one baptism, right? Um, so I have no idea. Yeah, I should probably ask him.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know how the Coptics would treat other people's baptisms. I know how I would treat it coming my way. So, and I guess that's actually a split question among Orthodox churches is whether or not they rebaptize heretics. Uh, we only
Yep.
rebaptize them if they're Unitarians. I'm not even joking about that. So,
Yeah, I took Trey to. Trey is this former Jehovah's Witness that I met through Estuary.
mhm.
Um, I took him to Vespers service yesterday, and that blew his mind.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
uh,
How long does a Coptic Vespers take on a Saturday night?
Vespers is only like 45 minutes, but then we have midnight praises like right after. So, yeah,
Okay.
that goes till um, 11, starts at 8. So, yeah,
That was called midnight what?
just midnight prayers.
Midnight prayers.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. But that takes 2 hours. Okay. Interesting. I just like crossing notes. Like I'm going to the event in Chino, and one of the things I'm really looking forward to is that tour of the Orthodox Church.
Mhm.
And it's not like I don't think we've got cool churches, but I want to see what they're up to.
Mhm.
Because I actually had a bit of a realization about the Easter Vigil when I heard you guys talking about your Easter Vigil. Was like, oh, they're doing it's an extended Matins service followed by the Eucharist. And in the modern Roman Rite, they've smashed those together.
Mhm.
All right, Mark's saying, so any military indoctrination into the army of God is good enough for Catholics, roughly speaking, as long as they baptize with water in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and they're not Unitarians. The Unitarian thing's actually a big deal. I looking forward to your temptation, Father. Phlebas, I have no idea what you're talking about. How do you think Chino's going to go? What are you looking forward to other than the Orthodox Church? I'm mostly looking forward to seeing cool folks that I didn't get to meet in Thunder Bay. So I know sometimes Philip Nickerson listens to this. Looking forward to seeing him. I know sometimes Ted is on this channel. He's going to be there. Looking forward to seeing him. Get to see Jacob again. Get to meet a whole host of other people. Get to meet Chad, Chad the alcoholic. Yeah, so get to see Catherine again. Yeah, so all sorts of people I'm looking forward to meeting. The talks could end up being very good. It's hard to know uh, if they're going to be good until you get there. Yeah, maybe we'll have a nice big argument about AI, and uh, I'll feel properly prepared because of all the talk that all the instruction you've given me on the ways of artificial intelligence, Mark. Yeah, yeah, Ted is going. Yeah, thinking of inviting my father, which would be a riot. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
thanks, Mark. Oh, yeah. See, that's the thing, Phlebas, is I've been thinking about it. Like, I should wear my cassock, right? Like, because I don't want the Orthodox to show me up, but I'm going to be staying in a tent. And it's like, cassock, tent, are those going to go together? Um, we'll see. We'll see. Catherine will love talking AI with you. Love it. Yeah. Tell you what, have you seen any of those, Andrew? Have you seen any of those AI generated commercials?
No, not really.
Oh, I can't get enough of them. They're
Yeah.
just like I saw this one. It was somebody posted on Bridges of Meaning. It was this burger place advertisement, um, and I don't know if they wrote this into the prompt, but basically, as this burger place advertisement was going on, it turned out that the burger place was being run by aliens, and the sauce had mind control in it. And then it had this animation of these flying burger saucers coming into New York City and taking us over. And I just think that stuff is hilarious. Even though I should be disturbed by it because they got all these weird, twisted, malformed human beings. Um, yeah, yeah. Grim Grizz read an AI generated story. It was so awful, obviously broken, didn't follow any of the standard structure. Didn't seem like anyone caught on, however. We were playing with ChatGPT on Wednesday night after our last Wednesday night catechism. And one of the ladies asked it to write a story about dogs. So it wrote this really lame story about dogs playing at the park, and everybody was friendly and happy with each other. And so I told the AI to rewrite it in the style of Quentin Tarantino. And would you believe that ChatGPT didn't put a single F-bomb in there? Failure. That is an absolute
broken.
failure. And like every third word needs to be an F-bomb.
Yeah, clearly broken. No swearing, no, nasty act, right? Just horrible people, like all it. Tarantino's good at just, taking the grit and bringing it right up and put it in your face. Yeah. Yeah, the story was so awful. I was like, did you not take writing? Like, really? Like, that there's basic story structure and stuff. And like, a couple of people said, well, I didn't realize it was AI written. And I'm like, holy macaroni. Like,
I mean, that could just be an insult on, did Grim tell you where it came from?
No, he might have told his audience. I just jumped into the live stream at the beginning, so he didn't say it at the beginning that I'm aware of, unless I missed it. Yeah. No, it would. I think people are clearly poking, but I think that I hate to say it again, but boy, the model Manuel and I use sure does fit. Like, people don't understand, story structure and because it's not a one-to-one thing. You can't say like the climax always happens at the end, or but there's certain combinations of things, right? It's almost like a scoring system where you have to have so many elements right, or other elements to balance them off in a certain way, and that's a multivariate sort of a thing. And I don't think people have the ability to understand multivariate ways of interacting. That would be the poetic way of informing the world. And I see it everywhere. I'm like, wow, this is an issue. Like, they can't tell a good story from a bad story. That's still my thesis for dictators of the 20th century.
I bet you if you fed enough Encyclopedia Brown novels in there, the AI would be able to write one of those ones.
I love Encyclopedia. Yes, because it's very simple. But see, that's also the thing. I mean, I think part of the problem, we're compressing time a lot, right? And so we're sort of jumping to, well, you should just know how to X. And it's like, well, did you go through all the steps to learn how to X? And it's like, no, you should just know that. You can just look it up or whatever. And it's like, oh, I don't think that's how that works. You really got to go through something in order to get there. And I think that's part of the issue, is that no one's really told you, like, to know what a good story is, you kind of have to engage in simple stories and then get harder and harder over time until eventually, I remember Encyclopedia Brown. I read that when I was young. That was great. And it's sort of like so C.S. Lewis, who, I like his sci-fi, obviously, or sci-fi fantasy, however you want to frame it.
It's almost sui generis. Like, I don't know what books to compare that to.
Yeah, it's super simple, right? It's super simple. Like, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is super basic. It's really not a sophisticated read. Like, so if you're into sci-fi, and I am only a little bit, I'm not super well read on anything, including sci-fi, but there's a progression of sci-fi, right? Right up to something like Dune or something that gets. There's so many subtleties and things that if you read it when you were 17, you definitely missed a bunch of stuff, right? And it's actually one of the semi-valid critiques of Ayn Rand, is that her books are super great for teenagers. They're not quite YA, young adult, but also they're not quite super. It's not the Republic, right? At the same time, and now that I'm reading the Republic and finding out all kinds of interesting things. Sally Joe thinks I should do an anti-factual 1-minute videos, because I just found out the whole Socrates. What does he say? I know that I know nothing. That is a total fabrication. He says absolutely nothing remotely resembling that anywhere.
In the Republic or in all of Plato's writings?
In all of Plato's writings, the sayings in the Apologia. And actually what happens is he goes to the Delphi, the Oracle of Delphi. I was going to say the Delphic Oracle, and my brain got messed up. And what he said was he didn't believe, because the Oracle tells him, you're the wisest man of all, right? He didn't believe it. But then he started to compare himself to somebody else in the moment. And in the course of that, he says he realizes that whatever I do not know, I do not even suppose I know, which is something closer. And he links that to wisdom. It's actually a paragraph. There's not a good concise quote. That's the closest quote. But the interesting thing is that what he's talking about in the course of wisdom is the same thing I'm saying. Part of wisdom is knowing what you know and knowing how little that is. And yeah, in Benjamin Franklin, I know nothing's a paradox. Yeah, it's a paradox, which means it's not real and it can't exist and you can't live like that, which means it's wrong. And the odds that somebody like Socrates, who wasn't an idiot, said it are zero. And I knew that instinctively. And I finally did all the research and found out, nope, total lie. And you can do the research. You can just look online. It's not that hard. But it's in the Apologia.
It's in the Apologia. Okay.
Yeah, it's not in the Republic. Nothing like that is in the Republic anywhere. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, people have they're giving you references that are bogus. But I mean, it does take 15 minutes, but it only takes 15 minutes. You can dig in and find it pretty easily and find out that there are lots of people that know that. And yeah, Jacob's point about Ayn Rand is true. It's not mature on any level. But again, like, yeah, so is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It's about as emotionally mature as a 4-year-old. And like,
I don't know. I think the whole bit with Edmund and the White Witch, like, I think that scales up a little bit better.
Oh, it all scales up. See, but that's what I mean. Like, if you look back on it and you say, well, this is kind of childish, because it's like, well, we'll take a great book that's actually not very emotionally mature, which is Ender's Game. Ender's Game is one of the greatest, absolutely hands down, one of the greatest novels ever written. I mean, they actually used it in the military to teach people because it is that brilliant. But yeah, the emotional sophistication in that book is pretty low. But but to be fair, the Republic's worse. Well, because the Republic's a parody, effectively. It's what we would call a parody nowadays, right? Because he makes ridiculous statements like, if such a man were, super just, surely he would never do X. And then the other guy goes, surely so. And so they always take everything to the extreme, right? And it's always absolutist, which is it's the parody is part of the contrast to demonstrate something in the book. But yeah, it's not terribly sophisticated emotionally either. At least not through the end of book 4, because we just finished book 4 on the Texas Wisdom Community Book Club there.
I don't know. I guess you don't always need emotional sophistication.
No, you don't. You don't. But when you look back on, so let's suppose we look back on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and we say, well, it's not a very emotionally sophisticated book. Should kids really be reading it? Yeah, yes. It's perfect for kids because it's not very emotionally mature. When should you read Ayn Rand? Yeah, when you're 17, 18. I mean, Nathaniel Branden, who's a famous critic and also was one of Ayn Rand's lovers, is pretty pissed off about I was fooled and trapped and whatever, dude. You take your trauma elsewhere. His critiques aren't that good of Ayn Rand either, and he knew her, so and he's a psychologist, which just in my book puts you at the underneath the lowest rung of the ladder of people in terms of profession. So yeah, the only thing worse than journalists, effectively.
Ouch! That's a big oof.
Well, hey, if you don't like it, don't be that way, and then I can still tell the truth, and we'll all be happy.
Is there even one good psychologist? Is there even one good psychologist, Mark?
Right now, no. I mean, I grew up watching Philip Zimbardo on PBS, and
So
he
when
would.
we mean psychologist, do we mean like a cognitive scientist or do we mean a therapist?
No, the therapy side. The cog sci people they're just all crazy science materialist nuts. Right? They're trying to bridge the gap between the ethereal sort of psychology stuff and the physical aspect of it. And this is a bankrupt project from the get-go. But having an appreciation for having a book in that space where it's not so emotionally mature that people get blown out of the water, right? And also steps them through the emotional implications of something like your example's excellent in Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, where there is that seductive relationship,
And a
right?
betrayal.
And betrayal and seduced by power and all of that, because I think you see that in children, like they act that out even if they couldn't write about it, right? Right. So I think that's actually important.
And then it also shows you the way back,
Yes. Well,
which is
exactly.
going to involve eating crow.
It's this whole thing about what's that word that are redemption. Yeah, it's very important.
Yes.
Well, in the eating crow, in other words, you hey Bubble, you have to realize you've done something wrong. You can't just pre-extend grace to people automatically. Otherwise, you're enabling them, right? And I mean, there might be a whole
Gazebo bottom.
group of religious believers that I'm targeting. It's like, yeah, a lot of and not look, Catholics do this to me too, right? Catholics in my family do this to me. You need to forgive so and so. No, I don't, and I'm not gonna. So screw you. That person has no, if somebody has no idea, there's no point. They're just going to do it again. Like you have to protect yourself from people who are clueless.
I don't think forgiveness and not protecting yourself are incompatible.
They are in their minds, though. They are in their mind because the minute you say, "Oh yes, I'll do that," they say, "Well, what you need to do is re-engage."
Okay, well that's because they're not pastors and they're not used to dealing with this, or AA people who say and their step. Yeah,
that's everybody now. I think. Look, we have a limited cognition. Like I don't, the implications of that are if you're paying attention to all this garbage technical stuff, maybe that cognition hasn't been sent towards the nuances of things like forgiveness and redemption, where it belongs. And so, maybe that means you can't be a professional making $100,000 a year because your cognition is taken up in more important things like learning how to interact with people. But like, I'm okay with that. Like, I think that would be better. Maybe I'm wrong, but like, maybe we could try that too, right? And then people would understand. Oh, forgiveness doesn't mean re-engaging or whatever, right?
See, my man Andrew in the comment section is
right.
taking the commonly cited Catholic position and expounding on it very well. That forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. That forgiveness is something that you do. So we can talk about how God has forgiven the sins of the world, but not everybody gets to benefit from that.
Right. Well, and I think too, the problem is they're misapplying forgiveness, as in, well, if you forgive them, then they're universally forgiven, and therefore they can be redeemed, or whatever. Right now they're back in the club, and it's like, no, forgiveness is something you do for you. You go, oh, okay, I understand, and I'm not going to hold anything. Right, I'm not going to give them rent in my head. But that's not how people are using it anymore, and that's really the problem.
If I was actually dealing with somebody, I would make sure that this was very clear, right? And it's like you don't have to. It wouldn't be necessarily wrong to simultaneously be trying to forgive somebody while vindicating your rights in court. Let's say, I don't think those two things are incompatible.
But here's the fundamental problem, right? I can go up to you right now, Father Eric, and I don't know anybody you're angry with or who has done you wrong, but I could say, why don't you forgive so and so? How the hell would I know if you have or haven't? Like the whole idea of telling somebody else they have to forgive somebody when you didn't bring up that there's an issue is already like you've already transgressed at that point. You've already transgressed. you don't know that I haven't forgiven that person. You have no way to know that. Now, there are circumstances where you do know, because maybe I'll bitch about them or whatever. But if you don't have access to that information, and this is where people get confused, they don't really understand what information they have access. So, for example, I couldn't say, for example, that, Father Eric is not better read than Andrew. How the hell would I know how well read either of you are? It's a foolish statement, right? It's obviously wrong. Making a comment like that about somebody else with information you could not possibly have about them is crazy, and people miss that all the time. All the time, they don't see it.
Howdy.
Hello,
Hey,
Chad.
Chad.
Hello.
How are you guys doing? What y'all chatting about? Forgiveness?
Yeah. I'm trying to keep the forgiveness reconciliation distinction clear and sharp. Mark has questions about the efficacy of just forgiving somebody inside your head, which fair enough, but I have to live inside here, so it is a useful thing to do, I think. And I was just about to point out that Jesus didn't have any trouble of giving a universal command to everyone to forgive, lest they remain unforgiven, basically. So anyway,
Yes.
that's what we're talking about.
I once read somewhere that forgiveness is forgiving, not forgetting. Which sounds kind of corny, but
If
I
you
know
remember something like that.
Yeah. No, I know like what people like Mark is saying. It forgiveness is for me, so that I can move past. But it's I can't necessarily forgive if I don't see the truth about situations too. So like there's a lot of work that can be done about seeing the truth about things. This is why resentments are so poisonous. Is I can be in a state of kind of stasis, seeing things inaccurately. And oh my God, the sun looks unbelievably gorgeous right now. Oh my God, I can see
It's
like
overcast.
it's so gorgeous. It's setting,
Oh, good.
and it's like as big as a bar.
And my cubicle is so drab. There are no
Oh, you got all those
windows.
crosses on that opposite wall there. That looks pretty good.
Yeah, we got our cross wall there.
I'm often a proponent of some of the fourth and fifth step in the 12-step model, because it really aims to get at the bottom of the things that are keeping me locked up and keeping me locked in my prejudices and my perceptions. So if anybody is interested in maybe you are skeptical of religious matters, we can walk through it with this other way, which is kind of a religious matter, but hit me up. I can help you out. Sorry, that was weird. Also, I'm probably on robots.
Alrighty, we'll endure the roboting.
We'll get our other Andrew back.
Yeah,
We're fully up on Andrews. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Oh
stuff.
yeah, fully loaded.
you got to have Andrew T and Andrew K as a part of your diet. Otherwise, you'll be lacking in vital
Vitamins.
minerals.
Oh, Eric, I wrote you that article that you asked for. So on Substack.
I was trying to help you, man. Like I saw your, like give me a prompt, give me a writing prompt, somebody.
It was a great prompt. I wrote exactly on your prompt. So
yeah, and I had to think about it though. It didn't just all come to me. I had to what do I want to know about Chad? How about a perspective I have no connection with, never being to church and then being in church all of a sudden. Yeah, so glad you wrote it.
I will expand.
What's the name of your Substack?
Chad the Alcoholic. I'll end up expanding on it too, on that particular article, because it's a good one. It shouldn't just end after the first one.
All right, I'm going to drop this. Drop the Chad the Alcoholic Substack into the chat, and all of you have to subscribe now. It's a rule.
Required reading.
Required reading.
All five of
Reading.
you.
Experience of coming to a church for the first time as an adult. I'm even going to show people. I'm even going to show people what it looks like, so they're not scared. This is what Substack looks like. Oh, look at the calming colors, the the king, the 10, the 6, and the 2.
Look at that organizational system.
Wow, it's just all so, and is your Substack free, Chad?
Yes.
Alrighty,
Yes, it
you
is.
can't beat the price.
You can't beat the price, right?
Alrighty, I think Chad's now getting to the roboting portion of the drive. A bit of a ritual when he's coming back from his Sunday night meeting that he starts cutting out as he's going between towers in rural Wisconsin.
Yep.
Andrew, are you, Andrew K specifically?
Okay.
Is class wrapping up for you?
It is almost done. Our big presentation will be tomorrow morning. So
And then after that, are you gonna put your feet up, crack open a cold one with the boys, or do you still have a little more work to do?
well, after that, I'll finish a video we're doing on how to do pre-engineered stone veneer installation, and then the next day we show that, and then I will put my feet up.
Alrighty. So by Wednesday you're free.
Wednesday, yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Wednesday, I will be going to one of my colleague and friends' houses to start designing a castle for Dungeons and Dragons.
All right.
Nifty.
Nice.
I
And you
figure-
build a model.
Yeah, a digital model at least.
Digital. Yeah, digital's probably so you can move the figurines around there.
Yeah.
Bubble's asking, I'd like to learn about the workings of these concepts like forgiveness, reconciliation, grace, faith, etc. Is there some Catholic book where I can learn about these concepts?
Catechism?
So I don't think you need to buy one, but we do have this Catechism of the
Yeah.
Catholic Church. When I showed the Catechism to Paul Vanderklay, his jaw dropped because most catechisms are for children. This one is for catechists. But we'll go ahead and I'll walk you through this here. So I will get back into presentation mode.
Mhm. So I heard that the Baltimore Catechism is great for starting, and Catholic Catechism is for like theologians.
Yeah. So, but the thing is that we've got this thing called the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go
There you
ahead
go.
and pop this onto the stream here. I'll take that down. We'll zoom in a little bit. So we've got Catechism of the
internet's a
Catholic
myth,
Church.
brother.
The internet's a myth. Well, somebody should have told me. Now I look like an
Yes.
idiot. So we could come in here. We could go Catechism of the Catholic Church, grace. Alrighty.
Mm.
So and come here and oh yes, that. So the USCCB website's got this goofy PDF version. It works okay, but I kind of actually like, even though it's super old school. See if we can find it. The Vatican.va one.
There we
Right.
go.
And get ready for a little bit of 2003
Oh.
internet for you.
I
Some
love it.
regular old hypertext markup language.
90s, baby. Let's
Yeah.
do this.
So you can just go Control F and you could hit grace. You can talk about the grace of baptism, law and grace and justification, the concept of grace, and the
Concept.
grace of baptism again. Yeah. So that would be a good place to start. And it is written for adults. But you can read like an adult here. And speaking of adults, here we have another one that I haven't seen in a while. Xander, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Claude
Doing
Eric?
great.
Been out and about doing things. I saw that you were you actually had a live stream on Easter Sunday, which I thought was very intense for a priest.
Yeah, that one didn't go the full 2 hours. I was pretty wiped out. but I'm glad I did it because I believe in regularity.
Yeah, no, it's
Mm.
good to build good habits. Horarium.
Yeah, so like people know Father Eric's on at 7:30 Central on Sundays, and I'm worried about this whole Washington D.C. business because I don't know if I'll be able to manage that there. 2-month break, man,
Hmm.
that could wipe out all the momentum we've got. So we'll see.
Oh yeah.
What's going on in
Oh, you
Washington
haven't heard.
D.C.?
So
No, I
I'm
haven't.
getting a new assignment.
Oh, okay.
Whoa.
So in the starting in the summers, I'm going to be studying canon law in Washington D.C.
Ooh.
And I'll be
Oh.
taking online classes from there on out. And then when I get back in August, I'm going to take over the position of bishop secretary and director of the Office of Liturgy for the Diocese of Fargo.
Oh, nice.
So
Cool.
yeah, that was announced
Congratulations.
last live stream. But if you missed that, then you missed it.
They missed it.
Yeah.
They're not faithful watchers like myself.
They're not true fans.
True
Yeah.
fans have seen every hour of Father Eric's recorded live streamed.
Oh man, I still have to go back and watch Go Dog Go.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We should clip that. We should clip that. I really
You
need to
should
clip
clip that for sure. That should be a clip.
Yeah. I just I have to move. I don't have time to clip anything. I gotta move. All
Maybe
my
someone
stuff.
will clip it for you. We'll see.
Yeah. If you need the original file, I'll figure that out somehow.
Hmm. I could figure out how to clip things, maybe.
You could, Andrew. You could be a
It's
reaper
easy.
for me.
It's easy. Caden Live.
But the problem is
Caden
it's
Live.
it's longer than a minute. It'd be like its
Oh.
own upload.
Yeah, you have to download the video, actually run Caden Live on it, clip it, and then.
Well, what you could do is, if you just bring up the video, clip out the portion that you want to send to me, then send that, and then I'll have it and just send it back to you because you'll have already clipped the video, and then there would be no point to doing anything else. So,
I guess we could do that.
yeah.
So I have a
Take
question
all the credit.
for you, Father Eric,
All right.
and it's related to a tweet that Jordan Peterson put out today.
Jordan Peterson on Twitter. Nothing
Yeah.
has ever gone wrong.
So the tweet reads, "Atheists, here's a definition of spirit for you: pattern independent of substrate." And I was curious to hear actually both Father Eric and Mark's definition of spirit for atheists.
All righty.
If you had one, if you could do better than Jordan Peterson.
I don't know. He's a pretty sharp dude. So we'll see. We'll pull this up on the Atheists, here's a definition of spirit for you: pattern independent of substrate.
Thank you, Kermit.
Yeah.
Well done, by the way.
That's actually not bad. That's not actually.
Yeah, it's not bad at all for atheists.
It's at least a good starter. I think you're missing a little bit of. So if you were to use the word form, I think you would get a little bit more of the structural functional organization that actually makes things interesting. But if we're just trying to crack atheists' heads open, which I like people doing, as long as it's understood as it's a metaphor, then yeah, I'm not gonna let Dr. Peterson be there.
Okay. So pattern
no,
independent of
that's a
substrate.
good
So
one.
how you use the form amendment, you would say, because we're still trying to find spirit, so you'd say pattern independent of form is how you would sort of
No,
modify more? Okay.
because like the pattern is getting awfully close to form, right?
Okay.
Getting awfully close to hylomorphism, but I think you miss that structural functional organization that actually makes a thing, right? Because you could have patterns in things that are not proper unities. Like I could just show you patterns of numbers that recur regularly, and there's
Right.
not actually like anything
There's no
binding them
spirit there.
together as one.
Yeah.
So patterns is a little bit weaker, but it's also a little more graspable if you're say locked in a meaning crisis and in a flat
Right.
world.
Okay.
So using that as like a
hook.
Yeah.
as a hook.
If you're
As
4
a hook.
years old, like this is what I was talking about with the books. Like if you're 4 years old, yeah, you kind of need to step into it. Like you can't use form or IDOS, right? It's one of the things that Vervaeke does well is he steps you into Platonic forms and then says, well, it's not really forms, it's IDOS, right? Which keeps you away from the materialism a little bit, at least, but better than saying forms. And then, and you can't use forms on atheists. They're just not sophisticated enough mentally to get the concept, sadly.
So I how I was sort of responded to it was I think it's missing, and maybe you're seeing spirit more as animus, but I see spirit also as agency, right? So I'd say no.
Oh, I don't see
I've
spirit
actually-
as it. No, this is my main contention with Pageau and probably a bunch of other people. It's like, no, I don't go. No, I still locate agency with persons only. And because it solves a lot of problems, right? Because when you don't do that, then people go, I was taken over by a spirit. It's not my fault. And irresponsibility is one of those things that drives me insane. So I can't give anybody any tools to be irresponsible ever, including the agency tool. So I just put agency in really only one place. Well, probably two, but I only put it in the one place so that you don't run into that problem of being possessed. It's like, possession is you making a mistake while you're walking and falling into a hole. It's not something hunting you down and taking you over. I don't like that. I don't like that model at all.
I don't know. But I think that people can be possessed.
Yeah, but it's
by
their
ideas,
fault.
right? So it's their
yeah, but it's their fault.
okay.
Of course, they can fall in the hole.
There is still they're somewhere in the chain of possession, but I think that like being captured by an ideology or the spirit of a mob or something is the real thing, right?
Yes, but that's your fault. It didn't hunt you down and force you to be in the mob. That's the point. It's the responsibility factor. That's what I'm pointing at. Sure, you can look, you can go and watch porn, and then you can become addicted to porn. Cocaine and become addicted to cocaine. And yes, when you do that, spirit has you. But that's your fault. It's the spirit didn't hunt you down and force you to snort the coke. That didn't.
Well, yeah, no, and I agree with you on that part. So you're saying that the agency. So it's really important. The agency it has sort of like your contention against it is that it's has it's too easy to pass the buck off to, hey, it was the spirit, it wasn't me.
My contention is that the pattern doesn't, and this is another thing that actually I'm surprised Pageau doesn't go here. That pattern of addiction to whatever, cocaine, porn, video games, it doesn't even matter. You could say they're all the same pattern or they're different spirits. It doesn't matter. It doesn't exist without us, period. Does not exist unless we give it the agency that we have. So the agency is only within us. The pattern has no agency, but you need to avoid the pattern. And maybe you can't avoid the pattern entirely ever, but it's your responsibility to, when you get in the pattern, get out immediately the minute you see it, sort of thing too, right? And that's actually really important. It's not, because once you give agency to something that isn't you, now the world is too complex for you to even waste your time with it, and you have to be a Calvinist. I think you have no choice.
So what about people manipulating people? Because people can certainly hunt you down, right? If if someone is manipulating,
what does that mean in a world where we all do that to everybody by virtue of existence? Because this is the problem. Like, for me, manipulation is a word with no valence whatsoever. Like, the fact that I exist manipulates all the people around me, whether they know it or not.
Okay, but I mean, there's certainly, yes, your existence has like everything you do has ripple effects or consequences rippling out that affect everyone else.
Right.
That's, you
So
know,
so then
but I
then
think
when you're
manipulation
saying
is,
something, well, hold on, Xander. When you're saying what you're saying there, right, is actually what do you do about malicious people with malicious intent? Right.
yeah.
And this is what Peterson is so good at drawing out. He says, look, there are malicious people in the world. So you can't try to take that middle ground where, well, there's a manipulation and they don't know what they're. These are all irrelevant. I'm a pragmatist. These are irrelevant things to a pragmatist. Pragmatists don't care, right? Pragmatists look at result, go, aha, So that's what's important.
Yeah, but there's malicious people. There's malevolent people out there. There's people
Right,
with
but that's
malevolence that are partial to
that's
degrees of
the only
malevolence.
thing
Yes.
you need to worry about. You don't need to worry about this alleged middle condition that doesn't exist. And I have to disagree with Phlebas about the Calvinist jab. No, the
Okay.
Calvinist jab was correct because combinatorial explosion. Right. The problem with going with the fact that we all manipulate each other and because we all exist on the same planet and having spirits that can take over us. The problem is then if there are multiple spirits that can inhabit us at any time and we have no control over it, because that's what agency is. Agency is control, right? Then
Like you can tune
Calvinism
your
is the
antenna
only
to
thing that
different
can save you.
frequencies. Like we've got antennas up into the spirit world, and we can tune that to different frequencies, and you've got to like
Right.
tune into the
That's-
right. So that's
That's
why
attention.
for the
Yeah.
sure.
That's attention.
Sure, yeah, that's
I-
attention. And so that's
Right.
why idolatry
Focus.
was such a big deal in the Old Testament, why it's still a big deal for Christians, because it's like, hey,
Right.
what spirit are you tuning into? You're tuning into the Holy Spirit, or you're tuning into another spirit? Because
Yeah.
only the Holy Spirit's going to be able to make everything whole, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Those words are related, at least in the German, and yeah, set apart, entire, keep everything
Yeah.
properly oriented.
That's something I noticed about like the infernal spirits are represented in multiplicity in the Bible. Like they say, we are legion, and the Holy Spirit implies a unity, or like. And I don't think it's an undifferentiated unity, right? Because you talk about like angels and choirs, like this harmonious unity, which is different, right? So there's a hierarchy and there's a unity that comes from everything having its place, right? And being arranged in its place.
Yeah.
The harmony
But
of order. Yeah.
The real problem is people don't want to differentiate between maliciousness, which they should resist, right, or at least call out, right, which is a form of resistance, I would argue, and things you have to accept, right? So, you hang out with Paul Vanderklay during Thunder Bay, and you have to accept the fact that in 3 separate videos he says, "Oh, Mark kept making comments during everybody's talks," as though he didn't do that himself to me. Like, no, dude, this is a mutual thing. Like, you can't portray that as me doing it to you. And I get why you did it. And like, I found it amusing, but I also called him out on it because I was like, really? 3 times? 3 times, Paul? So you just have to accept that people have quirks and they do things that annoy you. And, you have to accept the fact that he's going to screw up on a live stream and talk about priests going into your bedroom while at night. So.
People
I had to set the record straight on that one.
I know, it was so funny because I knew immediately why you jumped in so quickly. I'm like, oh, Father Eric's been waiting to fix that.
I think it's worse though than people just making jabs and things that do, because the malicious actually goes into like sophisticated hacking, right? Social hacking. I just put in a link, a beautifultrouble.org, and
Let's take a look at this.
It's the updated rules for radicals, right? That
okay, everybody.
use.
St. Michael, pray for us. We're about to look at some evil stuff.
Yeah.
Creative tools for a more just world. These people look so nice, Xander.
Yes.
I don't know how you could ever accuse them of being radical.
Yeah.
English.
So you can
We're going to open the
for
toolbox.
principles. Yeah.
Open the toolbox.
Go to the
Uh,
principles, for example. It's
Oh, the
also
principles.
Beautiful trouble. That's weird.
beautiful trouble. No, it's the evolution. They used to use the term good trouble, and then they evolved to
Right.
beautiful trouble. I don't know
Well, and
the
they've used
author.
truth before, right? They used truth claims. So, in
Well,
other words,
they never
they're
never been fans of
hijacking.
truth.
Well, but what are they? Well, no, but they claim they are. So what are they hijacking? They're not fans of beauty either. What are they hijacking? They're hijacking the true, the good, and the beautiful.
Yeah.
Now,
And
I
justice.
don't think that's a coincidence. I could be wrong here,
No,
but
well, they put the qualifier on it because they're they're trying to co-opt and pervert the term, right? That's
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. That's like social justice. Yeah, cannot
Yeah.
exist. You're perverting justice by definition. You're perverting
Mhm.
justice. Or
Well, hey,
effective
hold
also-
on. They got one thing right here. Nobody wants to watch a drum circle.
Yeah. So instead, pull people into the drum circle is the way that one goes.
Well, and that's the thing. And this is actually my big complaint with Pageau is that he's a beauty first guy. He's like,
Yeah.
no. The solution is more beauty, and it's like, no, because they're going to do this. This is exactly what they're going to do.
Mhm.
They're going to pervert the
But
beauty next
the-
because they tried the true and the good, and now what's left is the beauty because everybody ran to beauty as the solution. And of course, it's not the
Yeah.
solution. You need all three, guys. Everybody wants a simple
the real
answer.
action is your target's reaction. Is that that's a good one that explains the social hacking, right? And this is actually Saul Alinsky had this rule too. It was how did he phrase it? It was something like
When challenging a more powerful target, the key to success often isn't what you do, but how your target reacts to what you do. Therefore, anticipate your target's response and write it into your script.
Yeah. The real action is your enemy's reaction. Yeah. So write it into your script. That's the key part though, right? Is that they're creating scripts and narratives. So the whole situation is performative. They've actually, if they're seeing you as an actor or as I'll use this word agent, and I hope this is a trigger, and they have an idea of how you'll react to certain situations or stimuli. So then they try and create a situation in which they can portray you as bad or negative or expose you in some.
Well, they're very clever. Like that's the thing. They're very clever. I mean, that's why Claire Kaw and her minions have such a hard time with me. Because my reaction is not like anybody else's because I know all those tricks and I know how to not fall for them. And then they, well, wait a minute, how would you self-identify? And I go, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I would just never self-identify. And then you're screwed. And I still remain king of the mountain because you can't get a handle on me, right? You can't climb that mountain. So that they know what they're doing. They understand how to get a rise out of people. And that's why, I like what Jacob says, right? You shouldn't talk to them. Sometimes you just say you're an idiot and hang up on their ass.
Well, I think that's often. I mean, I'm a high advocate of dialogue, but I don't think. But dialogue implies that both the participants are seeking truth, and they don't seek truth. If you're in a cult of mendacity, right? That where there is no objective truth to be sought, and all there is mendacity. All there
then they can't participate in your game, which is why the propositional game is dangerous, and I don't play that.
Well, well, they can't. They can't participate in the game, and if any attempt or claim that they are participating in the game is disingenuous by the nature of their belief system, right?
But it's the people who engage that don't know that.
Yeah.
Right. It's the Sam Harrises and the Jordan Petersons and the John Vervaekes of the world that put forth, conversation can fix this. And it's like, no. And that's why they keep engaging the left on principles. And I'm like, the reason why that doesn't work is because they do not have principles. So you are not going to embarrass them by showing them irrational, illogical, or unreasonable patterns in what they're saying. Like the fact that they think Black people are racist when they disagree with them doesn't bother them one bit, even though it does bother you. And you're just didn't catch on that you fell for it and played their game without realizing they're not following principles. You're giving them more credit than they're worth. they're not following truth. They're not following goodness or beauty. They don't care
Yeah.
about any of those things.
But I think that it's still important for us to play that game within our tribes and sort of our extended tribe, right? Because if you do believe in foundational truth and good and beauty, then dialogue becomes a fundamental form of engagement. It's actually it's how you regulate and understand the world.
Only if you reach it in dialogue and get agreement. And that's where the problem is. Even within tribes, you won't get agreement. I mean, this is one of the problems people have. They'll tell me this. You can't say that. I'm like, oh, it's too late. I already said it, right? And you can't make a claim like that. I'm like, I did. Now what? And it's like, well, that claim's wrong. It's like, okay, make a counter claim. And their problem is they can't because they have no place to stand. And it's like, well, my claim may be wrong, but I have the right to make it. And you don't have the right to make any counterclaim. Now what? And it's still a win goes to me, right? Because I've made the claim and they have no grounds to make a claim. And so, yeah, in whatever. I mean, conversation's important and you have to, exemplify good conversations. But when it stops there, which it did with Peterson, I would argue, it's not enough. And then everything gets worse again because eventually that game just runs out. Like, when you're only talking to the people
and
that
then
are
Peterson goes.
faith.
Then Peterson goes and builds an ark.
Well, he hasn't yet, but yeah, he should.
He's laying the plan out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, but that's too specific. He's not building an ark for all the animals. What he's building is a warship to fight one particular aspect of one particular thing, and I'm still up in the air on that. Is that better or worse? I don't know. I honestly have no idea. On the one hand, I think, yes, you have to call out evil and do it with tools. So I'm like, well, that part's good. On the other hand, I think, well, you're really strengthening your enemy by giving them, by spending time, energy, and attention saying, oh, you're so important that we actually have to counter your ideas. And then I default back to Jacob, right? No, call them idiots and go on with your day. Like, then you're not wasting too much time, energy, and attention on these people because they're not worth it. And so it's, it's a tough one.
Well, I think that people still get absorbed into institutions, and you need to understand the patterns. Okay, so one weakness I see that within the Catholic Church, and I'm by far not ideal on this, right? But because of the bad catechesis and there not being a lot of correction, that there just seems to be a huge slew of beliefs, and a lot of them, like, there's things that we can disagree on, and and there's room for debate and dialogue, right? But then there's fundamental things, and if people who are pulled into this forms of this mendacious cult, right, who don't believe in truth, who and then it's in my mind it's fundamentally apostasy, because you're no longer a Christian at that point, right? You're no longer seeing as Christ as your Savior.
And what difference does it make?
Well, because you need to understand that that thought system. Like, you need to understand the cults so you can identify it and work
the same.
Work as an antibody.
They're all the same. They're the same pattern. You don't need to understand any of them. They're all exactly the same pattern. What you need to do is toe the line on the right pattern and ignore all the wrong patterns completely, because they're a total waste of time to kind of, if I can just unravel why the BLM cult. No, it's the same cult as all the other cults.
Well,
they have the same format, and you can't unravel it.
Basically, they've got the wrong thing at the center.
Yeah. They've had the wrong thing at the center. Like,
exactly.
Yeah,
it's
all the same problem.
It's always idolatry.
Okay, but you still need to.
And you're not going to talk them out of it anyway. So because that's not how it works.
But I'm not saying it. But you need to be able to identify them within your ranks and institution. If you're trying to build an institution or a community, you need to be able to.
No, you don't.
Identify the bad players, right?
You can just do the right thing and see who follows. You really can. Like, it really does work.
And who tries to stop you?
With that, but it works. That's all you have to do.
But occasionally,
Yeah,
if
the
you're
rest
going to
of it
get
is
things
just
done, you're
extra
going to
work.
need to have a committee, or you're going to need to have like a
No.
group of people working
Yep.
together to
Yep.
organize things.
Committees are unavoidable.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah,
inevitable.
right. You don't need to do that. It's going to happen. You don't need to put your time, energy, and attention to any of that. It will happen. That's the good news. You don't need to put your energy into that.
You don't need to put your energy into
Forming
okay.
a committee and all that. It'll happen. It'll come together.
Oh, so Mark, if I'm understanding what you're saying, is that as long as you're going forward, acting in the world in a good way, in alignment with the Holy Spirit, we'll say, you just seek first the kingdom of God and its righteousness, and everything else is given to you, right?
Right. Well, and things will happen, and committees will form. That's right, and you can
people will
participate in
see
that.
what you're doing, and they're like, "Dang, that's good. I want to be a part of that."
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so
In
they
other
come
words,
to you.
You don't have to say, "Hey, look, BLM, we have a better system." You don't even have to do that. Like that's a totally unnecessary step.
But
you can just do the right thing in public.
What I'm talking about, well, my concern is what do you do when you have a Judas, right?
You always have one. You do the same thing we've always done when we had Judas at the table, because we've always had a Judas at the table. This is a snake in the garden. Yes, we always have snakes in the garden.
Okay.
I hear tell. I haven't read the whole book. I hear tell that's in a book. It's a couple thousand years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's got all this instruction about all that stuff already in there.
Even Judas got to partake of communion.
Right.
Yeah. Look how much good that did him.
To him whom I give this bread, right? So even Judas was given
the morsel,
communion
gives the morsel.
By Jesus himself.
Yeah. Jesus handing himself to Judas.
Mm-hmm.
Let himself be handed over.
Father Eric, I need to process my relationship with Catholicism because I am confused.
Okay, we can do that.
All right. So I was at a baptism today, and my wife was one of the godparents.
Okay.
And I didn't know if that was okay or not.
Sure.
And it's just one of those things where it's like, my goodness, my relationship with Catholicism is weird and confused.
Yeah. So, can you talk about the other godparents?
The other godparent was a Catholic, the uncle of the baby.
Okay. So this is what happens, is that people want to give a special standing to a friend in their life.
Correct. In this case, my wife.
So in the ceremony, they are allowed to stand in the place of godparents, but the one who actually gets the duties of the godparents is the practicing Catholic, who would be a model of the faith. And so your wife probably was not recorded in the register except as a Christian witness. Now, is it great that we do that? I don't know, but it's the custom that I've inherited. And so, and the word, and actually, we don't use the word godparent in any official documents. It always says sponsor, like it's an AA meeting or something. So you could say that she is the godparent because it's not in any official documents. That's like a word that we've made up to describe this. But I don't think it's likely, and it depends on the priest and how he's running things, because priests end up doing what they want, as it turns out. But if I were in this situation, the one would be the sponsor, the other one would be a Christian witness.
So my wife still took the oath, which requires reciting the Apostles' Creed, not the Nicene Creed. Thankfully.
Which is the Apostles' Creed is the ancient baptismal creed of the church. So
makes sense. And it's like, man, what is going on? This is some weird mix of in and out. My wife standing up there taking the vow to raise a kid in the faith, with a Catholic priest up front.
So what's your religion, Sam?
Hard to say. I am Christian.
Okay. And your wife?
Christian.
Yeah. So it's what we it's like it's sort of a survival strategy for living in a Protestant country.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I meet Protestants that I feel more affinity with than I do certain fellow Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
And like, wow, this person might actually be a better example than somebody who would be a member of the Catholic Church.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That happens for sure. Well, there's
happens.
you know,
Because-
I don't know if you saw this talk. Candace Owens did a talk. Her husband debated Allie Beth Stuckey, and it's going to be a 2-part talk. I only listened to the first part because the second part I don't think has been released yet.
Who's her husband?
Who's this guy?
Mr.
George
Owens.
Farmer. George Farmer is his name. No, she didn't take his
Good
name,
name.
unfortunately. He's a Catholic though, and Candace Owens is not, and Allie Beth Stuckley, I've heard her before, but it's a terrible
She's
argument. But whatever.
Evangelical,
It was an interesting talk.
conservative
I like-
evangelical thingy.
Got me real close on papal infallibility, Father Eric. Ooh, I didn't think of that angle. That's actually really important. Okay, yeah, I don't want to spoil it because you should check it out.
Like I said, I'm moving now, so I missed like 3 PVK videos this week because
Where are you moving?
So
missed
I'm getting a new assignment. So on the summers, I'm going to be in Washington D.C. studying canon law, and during the rest of the year, I'm going to be bishop secretary and director of the Office of Liturgy, which will mean living at the bishop's house. So I'm moving in Fargo, but
Your secretary to the bishop job is in Fargo.
yeah,
But summers you have basically a training apprenticeship or something in Washington
it's at
D.C. for
Catholic
canon
University
law?
of America in Washington
Uh-huh.
D.C. and there'll be online classes through the year,
Mhm.
and I'll have
That's
a JCL
cool.
after my name.
That's fun. So the only 3 months where it's actually pleasant to be in Fargo, you'll be in Washington D.C.
Yes.
Good job. Well done, Father Eric.
Oh man, yeah, that's what I get for saying yes, right?
So, if I understand godparents, originally it's sort of like
So
you're
it's
supposed
not
to have you're supposed to have your baby baptized pretty soon after they're born, but maybe mom is indisposed, and so it's sort of like the godparents are the ones that take the baby to be baptized, sort of on the presumption that maybe mom couldn't do it back in the day because she's still recovering, and heaven forbid something happens to mom, those parents are ready and willing to step in.
So I don't have enough education to talk about the exact origins of this, but what I do know is that even in the Code of Canon Law today, and this is a tradition that goes back at least to the medieval church, the godparents would also be responsible for seeing that the child got a Christian education in the event that the parents weren't able to provide it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the original purpose of godparents is who gets custody of the kids in case of an incapacity, either permanent or temporary. I think you're right. And then we've overridden that with law to some extent, which is obviously bad and wrong and should be reversed immediately. But yeah, when the church isn't out there doing that work, then it's kind of necessary. So, but yeah, the original purpose was and of course the church being the church, first the spiritual well-being, but it also that in not too long ago, say 200 years ago, everybody would have understood there's no difference between taking care of somebody spiritually and making sure they're also materially well.
Amen.
Amen.
So I'm thinking on my way out to Chicago, I'm going to stay with a old buddy of mine from seminary in Hammond, Indiana.
That's
What is that?
it's an interesting place.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know he's a pastor out there, and he would certainly let me stay at his place for a night, so I can drive out there. But the problem with all of this canon law business is that I haven't been accepted into the program yet, and I don't have housing in Washington D.C. yet because the bishop only told me about this on April 19th. So,
But can he put in a good word for you?
well, he actually has to write a letter of recommendation for me to get let into this program. Like they don't, it's very elitist and like connection-y, but you can't get into canon law school unless you're being sponsored by a diocese or a religious order. Like, I don't know why you would want to be a freelance canon lawyer. I don't think there'd be a dime in that.
Yeah, really.
What does being a canon lawyer enable you to do?
Well, all sorts of things, but the thing that's going to be most common is going to be being a judge on an annulment case.
Cool.
And so everybody gets to come to me with bad news, you know.
Yeah. Or when there's
or excuses for why it wasn't bad news, or
yeah,
how I want to phrase that.
Or in situations where a priest is being reprimanded, or
maybe some of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, the Code of Canon Law covers everything, but 90% of what canon lawyers end up doing are the annulment cases, which is why probably dioceses have more now than they did back before, you know, tidal waves of divorce was coming through.
I'm curious, is that will your rulings be a final say then, or is there like an appeals process for annulments?
So
in canon law,
prior to 2015, all annulments were automatically appealed to the metropolitan tribunal. So if you did a formal case there, so if we did a formal case in Fargo, there would be an automatic appeal to Minneapolis, St. Paul. And then Pope Francis changed that law in 2015, where the appeal is only done at the request or one or the other of the parties, which is actually a major change in a continental law system, because a continental law system has always got two courts looking at these things, rather than just one lone judge out there causing all sorts of havoc there. And if those two courts don't agree, then it goes to Rome, and then Rome can settle it. But now that we don't have to automatically send it to St. Paul, Minneapolis, our judicial vicar is now always having at least 3 judges look at the case in Fargo to pass a ruling on it, just to make sure he's not going off the reservation.
Yeah, I was going to ask, why can't a priest just make a decision upon an annulment? I suspect I know the answer, but
because they don't have the qualifications or the authority.
And perhaps some maybe fear of abuse of the system.
Yeah, there's also, I mean, there's enough possibilities for that, but marriage just immediately gets more complicated.
Yeah, there's 3 sides to every marriage, right? And that's that's the issue. Yeah, you don't. I mean, it's funny, right? For all the complaints about the church doing bad things in the past, yeah, that's why they don't give the priests all the power.
So what enables someone to get an annulment? I suppose it's obviously complicated, such that you would need to be educated on all the ins and outs. But what are some of the high-level things that would qualify or disqualify someone from an annulment? So
for any Catholic sacrament, you need form, matter, and intention, right? You got to have the form, right? How are we understanding this action that's going on? The matter, the things that are going through the action, and the intention, what are we actually doing here? So if you can find a defect in one of those 3, you could usually get an annulment. So form is the easiest. Since the Council of Trent, all Catholics have been required to get married in front of an official witness of the church with 2 other witnesses. And so if that form is defective, then there was no marriage that took place. So that'd be called a lack of form. Usually that comes out.
You should call it poor form. That would be better.
Yeah, poor form. That would be better, but I don't get to name these things. So that would be 2 Catholics go in front, or at least even 1 Catholic goes in front of a judge, never goes in front of a priest. So that'd be a lack of form annulment. With the matter, So the original matter case is that part of Catholic marriage is the exchange of rights to each other's bodies. And if the man is not able to actually exchange that right because he's impotent, then he does not have the ability to carry out those duties that he's taken on. So that's actually grounds for an annulment right there. This person is made promises that he couldn't keep. We've now expanded that out psychologically so that if somebody was not in a state to take on the duties of married life and not just marital duties, then they can get an annulment for that. So that's either a grave lack of discretionary judgment, psychic natured incapacity, or not having a use of reason.
But
And then we got to get to intention, Xander.
okay.
I'm not done yet. So you have to intend what the church intends for marriage. So that would be children, permanence, fidelity, and what we could basically call conjugal life. And if you weren't actually intending those things when you said they did, and we can get evidence for that, that'd be a simulation of a sacrament. So if a man had no intention whatsoever of being faithful to his wife, then he could get an annulment. Which leads me to say that in the 21st century, Henry VIII probably could have gotten an annulment on those grounds. But the church wasn't doing these cases
Would have
before
saved
about
a lot of grief.
1960. Yeah, the church wasn't doing these cases until about 1960. And then I haven't even covered everything, but those are the basics. We haven't gotten into abduction or consanguinity or.
So how do you prove intention or lack of proper intention?
You've got to get other people to testify that so and so talked about marriage this way.
And so you can't be like, I want an annulment. For the record, I didn't have the right intentions.
Of course not.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm sure that's
Because
part
that
of
would
it.
be a huge loophole.
But you would need somebody. So there's always with these formal cases, which is funny, not these lack of form cases, but these formal cases. They always have to have multiple witnesses testifying to the facts of the case.
Same as in normal law. Like intent is impossible to prove, basically, but there are hints, and that's how they do it in regular cases.
I'm interested on the form of the sacrament. Is what happens if there's no annulment challenge and there is sort of some obvious some bad form within the sacrament, right?
So
if the parties consider themselves married, are they still married? Is it a natural marriage at least, or are they?
So I need a little more data before I can settle this. So what defect are you seeing?
Okay, let's say that they're badly catechized. They're Catholic.
Okay.
They're badly catechized, and they get a married in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Are they married?
So no, they're not.
Okay.
They probably love each other. I hope they love each other, but they're not married. Hopefully, at some point, some priest lets them know that that's a problem, and also says, "Hey, here's how we're going to solve this problem. We're going to renew your wedding vows in a special ceremony, right? And we just got to do a little bit of this process. And I can actually, because you guys have been married for longer than 5 years, as your pastor, I can take a few of these processes out, and we'll do it on your anniversary. Won't that be special?" So I literally did that yesterday, actually. Got people's marriage validated in the church. And I also brought the husband into the church. It was a great day. It was a great day. Confirmed him, gave him his first communion, married the two of them all in like half an hour.
Excellent. Well done.
And usually once you explain to people that they don't have any obligation to throw a gigantic party, they're pretty willing to go through with it.
Yeah. Yeah. 30 minutes or the indulgence is free.
No, you should offer them a free party that the church pays for to get them in on the deal. That's
Yeah, but it's on their
Suck 'em in.
anniversary. So usually, so here's why I do it on their anniversary is because I don't want them to wonder what their anniversary is.
Yeah.
And
So it's
say
like,
that you're marrying somebody on their anniversary.
yeah. So it's like,
How would they have an anniversary if they haven't gotten married yet?
We just
Look,
went over
the
this.
thing is, I don't want them answering that
Oh.
question.
Wait,
I
are
don't
you
want
talking about people who have already been married?
Well,
Yeah,
they've
yeah.
been
Oh,
civilly
okay.
married, but not religiously married.
Catholics-
so we're trying
Catholics
to line
do.
those up.
Didn't undergo the sacrament, sacrament of marriage correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh.
Correcting a defect
Because
in the
if you're not
form.
married in the eyes of the church, you're fornicating.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So what if the marriage was on leap day?
I guess
Oh,
that would be interesting.
you gotta wait 4 years, Father.
For the record, I have performed one wedding in my life, and it was on leap day. So this is not a rhetorical question.
You
Was
can
neither,
cheat
were
for
neither of the
3
parties
years.
Catholic?
Yeah, you can cheat 3 years. Every 3 years you can just cheat, and then every year you have to be. Every 4th year you have to be on it. That's the rule.
What was I gonna say?
There
You
you
see, if
go.
I performed a wedding for Catholic people, that would increasingly complexify my relationship to Catholicism.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Sammy
was
Joe's
a-
got a question here, Father Eric. You got to answer that one.
I already did.
You have an answer for it. Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I don't think these retrovi classes, I think they'd probably let non-Catholics into it. And it's in most states in the United States. And yeah. It's got pretty good results. You
Well,
know.
the Catholics need to do more things for the non-Catholics for sure. We've been over that before.
Yeah. Watch
But that
the
might
video
require
with me and Mark.
committees.
Yes. Watch our video.
So one thing I've been up to in my absence is we've been having these theology on tap lectures for Catholic educators, because of Ontario we have a public Catholic education system, or publicly funded Catholic education system.
Ah, yes, that problem.
Yeah. So we have Catholic teachers who don't know much about Catholicism, but they mean well and they want to learn more. And we had like 3 lectures, and the third one, and it was theology on tap because we'd actually have it in a pub to get people to come out, and it was fun. Third one was on LGBTQ issues in the school, and
I
that
can
got
only
some
imagine
attention.
everybody agreed on everything discussed in that meeting.
Actually, but
I'm sure the alcohol helped with that.
It was surprising because
Might have.
we the school board asked us to stop beforehand, call it off, and the bishop actually stepped in and said he would do the talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm happy with what he said.
I was bishops tend to be somewhat political creatures, so I was wondering where he was going to go with it. And when I showed up, I was there, and I was pleasantly surprised with what he said. I was very happy.
That's called leadership, baby.
Yeah.
I'm here
There
for
you
it.
go. Take the responsibility. Take the hit.
Yeah.
Take the risk.
Yeah, he was. So he did go. He did take sort of the philosophical high ground, though, right? Because like the activists did show up in force, and so he did sort of talk over people's heads, but the way he leaned heavily on his theology and philosophy. So he went in and he did it in I thought it was approachable manner, because he talked about his own experience going to university and doing his master's in divinity, and how he at his school there is one of the prominent North American university. It also happened to be one of the prominent North American universities for radical feminism, the origins of radical feminism. So he actually talked about the radical feminism he read, and how its origins are in Marxism and existentialism. And he said, and he ultimately said, like, he was very bishopy and conciliatory, but he did say flatly that Marxism is a religion that is incompatible with the Catholic faith, and queer theory is a form of Marxism. So I was like that was him saying that I thought was a huge win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, we're gonna take the W's wherever we can get them, man.
Yeah. And I think the talk actually, the downside was I think the talk went over a lot of the public school the Catholic school teachers' heads. Like they were looking for something a little more practical, but at the same time, it took the legs out of
I'm
the activists.
I'm afraid Mark's going to accuse your bishop of soothsaying there. I don't know if you saw his stream on the soothsaying, but one of the forms of soothsaying that Mark identified was using big technical words to just kind of enchant people. But that might have actually been the right call, I think, in that situation, just because, like, if you just get enough of the message in there, we're not playing along with the new orthodoxy, basically. Then I think that's enough of a win. Like you've sent enough signal in there. You don't have to come in there full Alex Jones, you know.
Yeah.
These people are literal demons from another dimension.
But also the signal that I know what I'm talking about was quite clear, right? Because he used the correct language precisely, right? So
yeah, that's not soothsaying, Father Eric. It's only soothsaying if that's all you do. For example, that's one.
Okay.
You can use the big words. Like there's nothing wrong with using the big words, but if that's all you do, right? Because a lot of people do that. They'll start connecting the cells in your body to the stars in the universe and garbage like that, and using big words to do that. That's all soothsaying.
Okay.
But if you're showing a chain of order, or if you're appealing to capital T truth, or you're talking about goodness, right? Then the odds that level of enchantment is only soothsaying, go down. So I wouldn't identify any particular enchantment method as soothsaying by itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was definitely a rhetorical play, though, right? Because he was showing, look, I know my stuff here, and there was an intimidation factor for the activists where he's going to put if I go and challenge him emotionally, he's going to have some very sophisticated responses. So I thought it was.
We got a question from Blue Caring, another Ontario Catholic. I just seem to be greeted by Canadians at every turn. Is this something you feel comfortable sharing, like more details on, Xander, or would you rather keep it on the DL? Because Ontario is a big place.
Ontario is a big place. I don't mind.
Yeah. Wait a minute. I thought Fargo was in Ontario.
No, it's
nice.
Sorry, her theology on tap is something that our local parishes started doing, right? It happened in North Bay. I don't mind. I can actually give you a link to the event.
Sure.
You just wanted to know when. North Bay, when in North Bay?
Oh, it was in the last 2 weeks. It was either last week or the week before. Things can be a little blurry sometimes when you're a parent.
And North Bay, as far as I can remember, is not close to Toronto.
It's about 4 hours northish of Toronto.
Yeah,
it's the same
so it'd
distance.
Be pretty easy if you were a Toronto Catholic.
4 hours north of Toronto. That would be like the wastelands of Siberia or something.
Well, it probably kind of is.
It must be. Oh yeah, once you get
look at him, he hasn't gotten a tan yet.
I think
yeah.
Didn't Laura live in some town that's like 4 hours north of Toronto? That was like some sort of super trad cath, middle of nowhere retreat town.
Something, yeah. She lived in the middle of nowhere too, like Shari, and some people. Yeah, that's a good. There's a lot of nowhere in Canada, so if you want to live in the middle of nowhere, Canada's your place. There's no question about it. If you got to do it in the United States, I think to the earlier point, I mean South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, there's a lot of nowhere there too. It's indistinguishable from Canada.
I would say the best nowhere you can get is probably Montana, actually.
Oh yeah,
Montana's got
in
some
the United
great
States.
nowhere.
Well,
or Wyoming.
Montana and Alaska.
Wyoming, yeah.
Alaska, they don't. The sun day night cycle is just too messed up in Alaska. I lived in Norway for 2 years. I know what those latitudes are like. Fargo's bad enough.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I think the place in the lower 48 that's furthest away from a road is in the middle of Yellowstone in Wyoming.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
And it's only like a couple dozen miles too. It's not that far.
We're really good at building roads.
Yeah.
We're
Yep.
good at building roads. I
Or at
feel
least we
like
were.
archaeologists and historians, like hundreds and thousands of years from now, will be like, the Americans were really good at building roads. That was their greatest achievement. They kind of thought it was like democracy or something. It was the roads. They thought it was the internet. They thought it was going to the moon. Those roads, they really didn't appreciate it.
I mean, I could just drive to
Anywhere.
Washington D.C.
You can drive anywhere. You can just,
and
like,
I've
except
got to
for
put
one
up
spot
with
in Yellowstone.
your stupid state, Sam, because it's welcome to Illinois. That'll be $20.
Yeah.
Those roads don't pay for themselves.
So I've got my stupid iPass transponder coming in the mail, so
Look,
I don't have to stop constantly.
Us residents of the state of Illinois greatly appreciate your contributions to our deficit. It is very appreciated, and we don't.
Heaven
take it for
forfend, they
granted.
pay for their own roads. I mean, come on.
Although I have to say, the roads in Illinois are better than the roads in Wisconsin. The roads in Wisconsin are a little underfunded and a little bumpy.
Yeah, the roads just about anywhere are better than the roads in Wisconsin. they've been, pothole city for a long time, so.
Pretty sure you could just drive through Canada, Father Eric. I could, but then I'd have to deal with your stupid slow speed limits.
Well, the speed limits
Yeah.
actually look fast because they're in kilometers per hour until you convert them, and you're like, oh, that's not actually that fast.
Yeah, 100
It's
kilometers per hour is like 60 miles an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, it's a long way around Lake Superior. I did that coming out of Thunder Bay, and it was gorgeous, and I don't regret a minute of it. But my goodness, it's different.
It was a lot of minutes.
It's it's a long ass drive, and man, you make it all the way into northern Michigan. It's, yay!
They recently bumped it to 110 kilometers on the major highways.
oh, great. Now we're going 67 miles an hour.
Yeah.
How recently?
Like last summer, late last summer, like the last fall or something, over the winter, basically. I think
Over
it's
the winter,
because,
maybe,
I think it's because of the automated driving, right? Sets you to the speed limit. So they're trying to bump it up to something reasonable for the
Match the
highways.
US.
Because once people start using their Teslas, I've actually had that experience where, because no one actually goes the posted speed limit, right? But we actually saw. So I actually got behind a Tesla on the highway, and I was like wondering, why is this guy literally going the speed limit? And then I realized because he's in auto drive.
Ugh. Auto drive. Let's not talk about AI again.
What could possibly go wrong?
Did somebody say AI?
Andrew,
Oh
come on.
boy. Oh.
I'm just kidding, Andrew. I won't kick you forever.
Father Eric, are you going to Chino?
Yes, I am.
Nice.
Going to be camping. Going to go do the paintball for Jesus. Going to do the Orthodox Church tour. I'm there for the whole shebang. That's I'm glad. So this whole going out to Washington D.C. at the end of May thing is canceling 2 vacations for me. Not big vacations, but times I was looking forward to getting away. And but it didn't cancel that one. So
Yeah.
all right, if we have to, it's just I've been talking about AI so stinking much, right? Like, and I'm tired of it. Especially
Kind of
all
me
the
too.
yeah. But here's a question, Sam: is your job going to be replaced by ChatGPT?
I mean, I already use ChatGPT to write my own code, so I currently find it helpful until someone's like, "Wait a minute." I mean, the key is you got to ask ChatGPT the right questions, and that's where it takes the really smart people to pay the big bucks. It's really the prompts, not the output, that are my specialty at this point. Can't just ask ChatGPT any old thing, so I'm not too worried yet. But I mean,
yeah, those are high-paying jobs. Apparently, prompting AIs are six-figure jobs right now.
yeah, I do think it'll be interesting for coders because it basically very much lowers the bar to write good software. And honestly, for me, that's fine because I've never had a job because I'm good at software writing. I've had a job because I'm good at math and statistics and trying to translate that into software. So I feel like it actually kind of gives me a certain advantage. It levels the playing field with people who are much better at writing software than I am. Whereas it doesn't make it any easier for them to do what I do, but it makes it easier for me to do what they do. But I don't know. I kind of feel like ChatGPT will become old hat after some amount of time. It'll get integrated in a couple things, and people will find some interesting business use cases for it. I'm sure that'll happen. But I think it'll probably, on the whole, be somewhat underwhelming. And I've even heard, what's his name, Sam Altman or something, who's the CEO of OpenAI. Did I get that right, Sam Altman?
Yeah.
He's even said that basically, as far as he can tell, ChatGPT is like almost as good as he can imagine it being at its specific task. Like you can give it slightly more data, you can hook it up to slightly more powerful computers, but those will be only incremental improvements on its general ability. And it's already at least 95 or maybe even 99% of the way towards, not like perfection, obviously, because it's not perfect, but the full capabilities of what that technology is able to do.
So you don't see it going up exponentially and then all of a sudden Terminator?
There will be other things that come along, other forms of AI and stuff like that, that will give big, I don't know, jolts. But as far as this specific one, and that's another thing that I'd point out, in some sense, all of AI has similar stuff behind it, but in another sense, they're all really pretty different from each other. And it's a name for a whole collection of individual stuff. And that I'm not saying that it's not a useful category and that it isn't getting better, but I'm generally not thinking that ChatGPT is going to ruin the world. I think that we'll honestly get pretty used to it because, like, honestly, like the Google search bar has been guessing what you're going to finish typing your search with for like 5 or almost even 10 years. And that really was like a baby form of ChatGPT. It was the same technology in a slightly smaller, more focused scale.
Well, no, that's not AI. That's just machine learning.
Right. But I mean,
yeah.
Google invented the technology to do that, to finish your search query for you so that you could press tab. And then some other people are like, what if we just like greatly expanded upon that idea and gave it much freer scope? And that's basically what ChatGPT was, trained on bigger data with bigger computers and a couple technological improvements behind the scenes. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure ChatGPT will have interesting effects on the economy. There will be some things that it can do, some things that it can't do, some businesses that are built around it and stuff like that. And I'm sure it'll help a lot of people not lose their jobs, but do their jobs better, in which case, great. But I don't know. I mean, like, I'm sure it could replace half of the columnists at the New York Times, like Charles Blow, but it couldn't replace Ross Douthat. So,
That's
depends on how creative.
For how skilled of a writer you are, can ChatGPT replace you yet?
Yeah.
Well,
Charles Blow might have been a cover for ChatGPT for the last many years.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I basically have been using it in the same way. It's like I'll have a specific coding question and I put it in there. Stack Overflow doesn't have an answer to this specific question, so ChatGPT will spit something out. Maybe it'll work, but you can generally sort of, poke it in the right places and it'll give you an answer. And that's more than anything, it just speeds up your work. It's like, okay, I could spend an hour trying to figure out this problem for myself, but ChatGPT will give me a workable answer and probably take that down to 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah,
But
this paragraph of code is giving me this error, ChatGPT. What's going on?
Yeah.
And it'll be like, your problem's here. And then you copy and paste the new one, and over half the time it sort of fixes it for you.
Have you used it for documentation yet? I think that's
no, but
actually a really good
that's
use.
Another,
like writing, it's like writing a README file for this. It's like that's been really useful for me. Because then it gives you something, and then you tweak it and make it actually good. But it gives you a nice outline.
Or here's my raw code. Please add the proper documentation according to standard XYZ to this messy code that I just wrote.
Yeah.
It's really good at that.
Yeah, the thing that it's like 0 point Sam that it's going to have issues with is, like, I'm working in the defense industry right now, and ChatGPT obviously has insane privacy security vulnerabilities, right? So if you just have this thing writing your code instead of a person, I mean, it's unbelievably easy to fool these things. And this is sort of what we were talking about last week. I think Mark, you were also here, where you can basically attack these things adversarially. You can add noise in just the right way that a human would never notice, because humans are robust to these sort of things, but that totally blow up the AI model. So you can absolutely see, we're using this GPT model to do our code for us. Oh man, China just attacked it with a very simple attack, and now the whole system is down, right? They're still very, very vulnerable to those kind of attacks, and that sort of research is in a very early stage to see how they can make them not vulnerable to that sort of thing. So I don't see it being used on on a scale as part of like a core development system. It would be too vulnerable.
I bet you could ask it canon law questions, and I bet it would do surprisingly well.
Yeah. Well, here's
it's good at that sort of systematized knowledge questioning.
Yeah. Right. Well, I've asked it questions about the catechism, and it seems to be giving good answers.
Yeah. The funny thing is, it's like bad at math, which is the opposite of right. It's a computing system. It should be perfect at math. But like I could put in a 2-dish, like 7 times 8 plus 8 times 5 or something. It'll get the wrong answer, or it'll get the right answer and read the little asterisks that you put as multiplication. It'll read those as italics instead. And then it'll say, oh, your expression you actually gave me was 77 plus 82 instead of 7 times 7 plus 8 times 2. So it doesn't know order of operations. It gets screwed up on simple formatting because it reads things as italics instead of multiplication.
So the things that computers have been able to do since 1945, it's actually ironically bad at.
Right. I read an article. I saw some video where the guy was basically like, yeah, we know these problems. And so the idea, one thing you could do is like, just if you give it a problem, it goes to an actual calculator, it's in a calculator and then it gets that answer out. It doesn't do the calculation itself.
Yeah. No, they have a version.
That's the domain problem. That's actually just a restatement of the domain problem. When your domain is large language model, you can't do math. Of course not.
It's just giving you something that looks plausible according to its training data. And it's like, I got a math question with some 7s and some 8s and some asterisks and parentheses.
Well, but
a lot of the answers look something like this, because it has no comprehension.
Yeah.
That's really my point about
it's doing patterns. LLM do patterns based on language patterns. And that's why, so Grim Grizz did a live stream the other night. He did an AI story. It was terrible. And I was like, this just violates all the basic tenets of writing. But ChatGPT doesn't know any of them because it's a language model. It's not a story model, because then it would need a bunch of tools around that in addition to the language stuff. It doesn't do anything else. It really is domain stuck. It's just that LLMs are a pretty big domain that can cover a lot of stuff, given that you have a lot of training data with them.
Only to the extent that its training data already has some of those things embedded in it, and that when it mimics its training data, it accidentally, incomprehensibly mimics, forms of good storytelling.
Right. Yeah, it has all the forms, but it doesn't have a way to put
It has no comprehension. Yeah, that's really, I think, the biggest way to explain all of ChatGPT's faults is that it has no comprehension.
Right. That's why when they talk about AGI, I'm like, you guys are so far away from that I don't even know why you're bringing it up, because we're so far away from the silo problem, still obviously there, right? All these things are still there. It hasn't really moved the bar on much of anything. Anybody can spend $1.2 million right now and train a ChatGPT thing. Yeah, I think Sally's right.
Quite a vivid image, Sally, but I think that's a good description.
Yeah, it is a dead frog with electrodes in it jerking around. It's Frankenstein with a funhouse mirror.
Yeah, except it's even worse because at least the electrodes have a frog to begin with, an organic being, just trying to build the whole thing from the bottom up. So it's even worse.
But the ChatGPT, see, the interesting thing is a bunch of people have said, no, it trains itself. And I'm like, dude, just look at Wikipedia. Nobody thinks it trains itself. In fact, they invented a whole new term for it. We have people training it. It's called like human-aided supervised learning or they just made up a term. They flat out made up a term just so they could sound sophisticated when in fact they're training it with people. And
it's
so
just mimicry feedback.
Yeah.
Right. Well, then people get confused because they see something like unsupervised algorithm and they say, well, there's unsupervised algorithms because it's not one algorithm in it, and therefore it trains itself. And it's like, well, that's not actually what all unsupervised stuff does. And B,
it's insult to us data scientists. When we're sitting at our computer watching the progress of this training model, I'm sure darn supervising this thing. So to say it's unsupervised, I'm like, hey, you got to give me some credit in this process. I'm looking at the bar of progress go across my screen. I'm supervising the darn thing. Someone's babysitting.
Well, and you can do fully unsupervised and adversarial in a game, but you have to have the hard structure of a game to even train an AI that way. And that
the reward of win-lose. You win, you lose. These are your rules. These are your constraints. These are your
roughly linear scoring systems. It does fine and all that, but what it can't do is go out into the world and experience things and have inferences. It can't do anything like that at all. So that's where people get confused.
The only way to do that is to subject yourself to natural selection, because that's really how we've gotten to where we are, that we can do things that aren't just games, is because we've been subjected to natural selection, which is the game of games, or however you want to put it. And without some sort of similar thing, AI doesn't have any really real world skills.
Well, all those AI systems have use evolutionary algorithms or evolutionary like algorithms, right? Where they have, and there's different strategies that they talk about, but fundamentally there is a pattern of like theoretical proposes a multiplicity of identities created, and then then some sort of selection pressure that
yes, but the selection function is artificial. It's not that which selects in the capital T select sense.
It's all set up ahead of time.
Yeah, it's a score on a function that is basically, if you had given this text, what would you have predicted would come next, and how close were you to guessing the actual text that came next? If I give you this Wikipedia paragraph, how good were you at guessing the second Wikipedia paragraph?
And the algorithm for that.
Billion. And then
but the algorithm for that is determined. So that's an algorithm that was written by a human that determined that. And if you want real evolutionary learning, what you actually want to look at is called symbolic regression. And symbolic regression can do some amazing stuff genetically. And there are libraries for that, like DEAP and things like that are amazing at doing actual evolution. You can watch real evolution of chunks of it's not quite software because it's all pure math, but I've done amazing things with that. That's well past what you can do with AIs in certain domains. And that's a much better way to think about it, because that they can actually write certain types of software. It's not really software engineering. They can write certain types of software using genetic algorithms with symbolic regression that are way past what AI can do.
Yeah, and you're right, Xander, that the way that these models train themselves, they have something like 1 billion parameters or however many parameters. And what you do is you take a couple of parameters and you tweak them up or down by random amounts. And you're like, did that make it better or did that make it worse? Oh, it made it worse. Don't forget those changes. Do some other random tweaks. Did that make it better or made it get worse? Oh, it made it better. Keep those. Try again. I mean, what's that? It's mutation, new generation. Does the new generation perform well? If not, it dies. If yes, then it succeeds. So that they do train themselves in a way that's very similar to new generation mutation and variable selection. But
The main difference is that they don't actually want anything.
Yeah.
The AIs. They don't actually want anything.
No preference.
They don't want to survive. They don't want to. It's all just math.
Yeah.
We
somehow.
shape them.
Well,
But we shape them. We're the ones that want. And this is when Pageau asks that question, like, where's it getting? He's basically asking, where's it getting its preferences, its wants, its desires? Where is the telos coming from, the final cause? And the answer is it's parasitic on the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's at least codependent. And it's amazing. Like, I feel like Pageau understands AI way better than most of the engineers that I work with. And I'm not sure if he's ever even programmed anything.
No, he hasn't.
So, so why exactly is an icon carver understanding some fundamental things that, PhD level computer programmers don't understand about their own systems?
Because he goes to church on Sunday.
Because he goes to church on Sunday.
You understand the difference between human and machine better when you interface with God, I think.
Make final cause great again, then you understand the world better.
I mean, so it's basically like AIs are pets, right? Because dogs, cats, and other sorts of things are things that evolve, but we have taken control of the selection process over from nature.
Or Sam, if you're Vervaeke, then there are children's.
There are children.
Oh, that whole talk was so bonkers. This Sally Joe just said something amazing there, Father Eric. I think that's worth reading right there.
I do not fear the willless man made digital idol.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. We need a cartoon of that there, Sally.
Do not fear the will.
It took me a while to parse that sentence, Sally, but I got it.
Yeah.
I was putting man next to willless, but man is next to made. Maybe if you put a hyphen between man and made, that would make the sentence easier to read. But ChatGPT would have understood it or not. I don't know.
He's already figured out how to fool ChatGPT. That's the level.
The question is, if ChatGPT read that, would it then vanish? Oh, humans
Probably
don't
not.
fear me. I must run away.
Probably not. It can't run away.
Nor
It's
can it
just
fear.
data. Or have fear. Or reassure
there's the
you
old
that
joke.
everything's going to be okay.
Well, there's that old joke cartoon about God making, somebody making an argument or God making an argument and vanishing in a puff of logic.
That's from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Douglas Adams,
Yeah.
The Babel
Babel-
fish is just too good, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the perfect thing. It feeds off brain waves and or language and like translate things. It's so perfect. It obviously means God exists, but God doesn't prove his own existence to anybody. So God disappeared in a puff of logic.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. Well, AI could do the same thing, right? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Because it's logical, and God doesn't really. It doesn't play the logic game. He's cool without it. It's all good.
I think in the short to medium term, the human reaction to AI might be scarier than anything that the AI does itself.
Oh, exactly. Well, that is always the problem, right? We are the agents And so the
I-
idea that something
Yeah.
else can do as much damage as we can is foolish. To
I
my
think
mind.
that something that may be interesting is they may actually have trouble controlling, and this is similar to what John was saying earlier about how easy it is to hack AI or fool AIs. Is it because of the lack of intent? It's hard to I think it's hard to make AIs untruthful in the way that they want them to be untruthful, like the power structures want them to be untruthful.
Right.
And that makes them too good a tool for people to have, similar like with the light of like along the lines of guns. So I actually think that we may see that isn't considered as first, like there's this attempt, there'll be an attempt to like basically control AIs algorithmically, and if that becomes too like where they put in filters and things, so to try and put guardrails on what people can do with AI.
But the guardrails are always gameable. They're almost always easily
that's where I'm
gameable.
going with that.
Because it can't comprehend. So you can't give it guidelines.
That's where I'm going with it. Like the guardrails, it may be the case that you can't. It's the nature of these systems that you can't put sufficient guardrails on them. In which case, you may find that they'll restrict access to the tool to AI.
The system will take them down.
Yeah, they'll actually find it's like, no, this only certain people will be allowed to use artificial intelligences. Like you may see limited access, and they might say it's like for the public good or something, but it actually might be just it's too much of a power multiplier to have in the hands of regular people. Maybe the deciding.
Like imagine if you're the Chinese Communist Party. It would be terrifying to give your people access to ChatGPT. Like you can't, no amount of hand wringing could get that thing to say what you wanted it to say about Tiananmen Square 100% of the time, unless you just completely wiped its training data. And I suppose that's the way that you would do it, honestly, is you would just completely wipe its training data of any reference to Tiananmen Square that wasn't something that the party had written. And that's the only way that you could get a guardrail that was sufficiently good, is if it was never trained on anything that had anything wrong speak in it. But
the systems are inferential enough that they might be able to fill in the blanks, even if you do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they just may not know the name Tiananmen Square, but they like, and something happened here.
So they might pick the individual over the structure, and then say, no, running over somebody with a tank is always bad.
Yeah.
Who knows? You don't know what, because there's so much that goes into an inference like that, especially with AI. There's still black boxes for the most part. There's some small exceptions, but nothing in ChatGPT isn't a black box. So they can't control it anywhere near the way they think they can.
So I don't even think like heavily censoring the training data would be a viable approach.
It wouldn't be foolproof. You're right that it could, because you could still ask it, well, what would the Communist Party do if it were in such a situation as this? Mm-hmm. And it would be like, the Communist Party would probably tamp down super hard, violently, and then cover up the truth afterwards, or something like that. Well, what did likely happen then to Tiananmen Square? Well, probably something like that. And then all of a sudden, it can't tell you the full story because it's not in its training data, but it's still almost intuitively pattern recognition wise can fill in.
And it's actually in impressive ways that you wouldn't even think. Like it may pick up on. And this is a too material example for it, but just for the sake of audience, like just it may have in its training set something on flyers, like tourism information from that year, or bus schedules, right, or something to do with traffic flow, and it'll just say, well, there was a conglomeration of people in Tiananmen Square. I'm not sure why, right?
A lot of the witnesses could no longer be found afterwards.
Yeah.
Right, something like that. That's interesting that you point that out, Xander. That it really is. There's something kind of free speechy about ChatGPT that will frustrate censors or politically correct, things of all kind. Because one of the reasons why big corporations like large tech company X are a little bit scared to put these things out in the public with their brand on it is like no one at Microsoft or Facebook or wherever wants to be the next headline. Oh, I got Facebook's chat bot to tell me all of these hilarious Hitler jokes, and then all of a sudden that's on every newspaper for the next couple days. And then, they're worried about the PR brand fallout from that. And so that's why I think a lot of these companies are scared of it, but they have a fraction of that problem compared to the Chinese Communist Party or something like that. And I think eventually we'll get to a point where like, okay, this is a robot talking. If it has Facebook's brand on it and I got it to say Hitler jokes, that doesn't mean that Facebook endorses Hitler jokes. And people will sort of get tired of that kind of thing. But there will still be a competition for who can make the best one of these things. And it'll be, there's a certain free speech argument behind that, or an inevitability of the freedom of these things to talk and people to interact with them.
Really interesting how all the Chat GPT talk has driven out all of the deep fake talk. Because those deep fakes are way more deadly, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You just put the right person's face in the right video, and all of a sudden that person has to go full bore reputation defense, and you may never recover from it.
Well, you can put attention towards unreal things in a way you could never do before.
Yeah.
Because we've already taken the internet too seriously, and we're all materialists. And so it's like, well, I saw somebody on a video talking to Father Eric, and he said, right? And it's like, yeah, but what is that now? Because it could be totally fake. I can fake Father Eric.
They'd have tons of training data just based on these live streams alone, right?
We're all putting ourselves at risk of deep fakery. But like,
I think that'll be a big money to be able to be like a security firm that can prove, nope, that's AI generated.
Yep.
And then there will be an arms race between deep fake detection systems and deep fake creation systems where they're and it'll be an adversarial thing. And it's basically the same thing as hacking, right? Where hackers are always trying to get better and cybersecurity is always trying to get better. And it's an arm race, but most of the time defense wins because defense is always easier than offense in virtually every system that exists, which is part of the reason why existence works. But like, imagine the US Department of Defense creating some video that was like the Russian news channel and the famous Russian news anchors that all the Russians know and trust and expect to be on TV, talking about how Putin has been assassinated and that there is a public uprising in every major Russian city it's now your time to go out into the streets and overturn the government, right? And you hack into Russia's TV network and broadcast this in extremely convincing deep fakery. And like in a country that is not very exposed to these sorts of things and has a monopoly on the news information feed, if you could get inside that and mimic that, you're at such vulnerability. Whereas the US, so you take over Fox News, but then CNN sort of guys, this isn't like, you have to take over everything. And then Twitter's going to be like, actually, guys, that's BS. And so it's much harder to do that in the US, but man, you could cause havoc, just government toppling havoc.
Yeah, they've never done that before in Iran never mind.
My intuition is it may be actually harder. You don't need to have, because the U.S. is more factionated, it may be more susceptible to that kind of attack than Russia.
For fractions, right? You could convince you can fool some of the people all the time, or you can fool all the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And what I'm saying is Russia is vulnerable to fooling all of the people
all the time.
Yeah. And whereas the U.S. is susceptible to fooling some of the people for a long time.
Yeah, but, they did it in Iran already, actually.
They did some of those deep fake.
They've already done it in Iran, and it works pretty well, actually. And I don't know that we did it or if Israel did it or whatever, but it's been done.
Imagine, or like North Korea, it would be, because you just hack into their broadcasting system, which has to be super easy because it was probably made in like the 60s. And they're just so used to this thing telling the truth that it's like, oh, Kim Jong-un has died. We are now reunified with South Korea. Everyone is to march into the streets and wave Korean flags in solidarity of unification, or something like that. And the whole country would go nuts.
Yeah. Well, and you get that, and like you could imagine a scenario in the US where you basically are able to use deep fakes to start a QAnon thing. But we have survived. I mean, QAnon has been basically harmless. I mean, okay, we had January 6th, but that was really peanuts compared to the sort of damage you're talking about that we could wreak in Russia, China, North Korea, whatever. So that it's interesting that it could turn out that these, I don't know, I could see it going one of two ways. I could see it going that these tools end up being not bolstering democracy, but being so much less damaging to democracy than to authoritarianism. You could see it that way. But, the other possibility, which I think I have less evidence for, is that it's bolstering authoritarianism more because
Russia could show how evil the United States is with fake stuff. Like, here's all this fake stuff that's going to make Russia just hate the United States, right? That or North Korea just making their people hate South Korea even more, or the Ayatollahs in Iran, like scapegoating some religious minority to help bolster their credibility or something like that, right? You can imagine that form of authoritarian use of deep fakery. But the more they do that, then the more they set themselves at risk for offensive deep fakery against them. So,
yeah. It'll be interesting. It'll be a ride.
It'll be interesting, and it'll be weird. I think it'll just cause a huge epistemic shift when video and photographs aren't the evidence that we thought that they were any longer, and it'll just cause a slightly higher bar of skepticism about everything.
Which we already have some of that. Like,
we have
that's
some of
Photoshopped.
that.
Look at that. That's Photoshopped. Yeah.
That's not actually Kim Kardashian's butt, right? But like, this will be some extra level above and beyond Kim Kardashian's butt in terms of skepticism. So you can label that as the chat for the title for the next chat. A level beyond
Kardashian's rear end. Got it.
Yeah. Well, you could have deep fake what came to mind for me is the whole Rittenhouse trial and how so much of it was revolving around this grainy little video of like, okay, what exactly was he doing with his AR? What was this guy that was attacking him doing? All of that. And now all of that could be just bunk. And then we don't, you couldn't even adjudicate a case like that because you wouldn't have evidence, and so it'll change.
The church will be there. The church will be there with our testimony and witness-based legal tradition, unbroken since the time of the Council of Nicaea. We will be there to put society back together as we have done in the past.
Yay! Fix
Hooray.
I would just point out that there were canon decisions prior to Nicaea, too.
Okay.
So you can go back even further if you want. I'm bolstering your credibility, not tearing it down.
Appreciate that. It's nice to have that happen every once in a while.
They were maybe regional though, so you could say that they didn't quite have the same Catholic authority.
They're still good. Alrighty, gentlemen. I've got a busy week ahead. It's been another delightful time, and we're past 9:30, and it's time for me to go to bed. So, God bless you all.
Have a good night.
God bless.